Okay, so in this video, we're going to be looking at cannabis and its effects on those with IBD. So we're going to look at three different studies. We're going to try to figure out dosages. We're going to try to figure out the types. We're going to try to figure out the benefits of THC and CBD among other components. I think there's 60 different compounds within cannabis. We're going to start diving into some of that right now. Okay, so if you want to see these studies and follow along, if you're on the computer, you can actually go to the description of this video. There's a link, and that will take you to an article, which basically I wrote. This video is based on, and it has all the links to studies within it if you want to follow along with the research studies. So we're looking at three, maybe four. There might be a little bonus study here at the end. Okay, so prior to 2011 or so, there wasn't really many studies on cannabis and the effects of it. And fast forward now to the end of 2019, there's still not many. That main reason is because pharmaceutical companies are not paying to conduct these studies. Like, who's going to pay for these studies to be conducted? Maybe government. Okay, so in the first study, the researchers looked at 30 different patients with active Crohn's disease, and they gave them 1 to 3 sativa joints. So with cannabis, there's two different types, indica and sativa. All these studies talk about sativa. There's not really any studies on indica. I'm not sure if it doesn't work or what the deal is on it, if no one is willing to try it. But basically, all of the medical studies look into sativa, which is supposed to have the medicinal benefits. So there's different ways that researchers track the track the activity of Crohn's disease. So there's this metric called CDAI, which is Crohn's disease activity level, and it's basically, from what I understand, when I ask around in my research on it, there's very little info on how it's actually performed. And when I ask anyone else, even those with Crohn's disease for 30 plus years, no one can answer this question on how exactly these surveys on CDAI are actually conducted. From what I understand, they're qualitative, not quantitative surveys. So basically, it's a series of questions, and your doctor will ask you, and you basically answer on, strongly disagree or strongly agree. It's not based on blood work, which I thought maybe it would be, and that would make it a quantitative study. But these are all qualitative, and so you'll see in the next study where patients actually say that the placebo ended up helping them, but obviously they didn't know it was placebo. But it's funny, everyone thinks that cannabis is going to help them, even if they're not smoking cannabis. Maybe they're smoking a placebo. So study 1, they smoked 1 to 3 sativa joints per day, and this research says the research says it's 0.5 milligram of THC in each, and that seems extremely low. There's different ways to consume cannabis. You can smoke it in a joint. You can vaporize it in a bong, like a glass bong with water in the bottom. You can eat it. You can take it as oil. There's a bunch of different ways. These studies mainly looked at joints, and joints are probably the easiest, maybe not the easiest way, but most common way of consuming cannabis. So one joint is normally a gram, and like a cigarette size kind of joint, maybe a little bit fatter, is a gram. And THC levels, based on the different strains, there's thousands of different strains, and there's more being invented, all the time. People cross breed different strains. They range from 1% like really low levels, and it's all based on percentages, if you don't know that, up to like 25%, although that's kind of rare. Anyone claiming that high, it's probably not actually 25%. But 15% THC is something that is pretty typical. So if you take 1 gram and you take 15% of that, well, that's 150. That's 0.15 grams, which is 150 milligrams. But this study here is complaining 0.5 milligrams, which doesn't really make sense. That's like an extremely, extremely low dosage. That's basically like 0.05%. Like, it's like a 20th of a percentage, which is super small. So I think they messed up, honestly, in this study, and actually reached out to those that did the research. Haven't heard back yet, but it doesn't really matter. I do think it's way low, because you'll see in the second study the numbers are a lot higher. But we can just assume that it was maybe 15% THC, and they smoked between 1 and 3 joints per day. So to conclude the first study, basically, their Harvey-Bradshaw index, which is one of the Crohn's disease activity index or indicators that they use, improved from 14 with a plus minus of 6.7 to 7 with a plus minus of 4.6. So the correlation even got a little bit tighter, and it also basically halved. The median did. So in the second study, they took a group of patients and they divided them in half. Half got cannabis sativa, like I said before, and half got placebo. And it says here 10 out of the 11 subjects in the cannabis group improved their CDAI from 330 down to 152. The plus or minus being about 100 on both of those. And in the placebo group, this is the interesting part. 4 out of 10 said that they improved. Not as much. It went from 373 down to 308. So the improvement was a lot lower, but people thought that they just naturally thought that the placebo was helping them because everyone just seems to think that cannabis is going to help them, which is crazy. It's fascinating. So in this study, they also took the cannabis in the form of a joint or cigarette form, and each joint contained 115 milligrams of THC. So if it was a 1 gram joint, that'd be around 11.5% THC in that strain. So if you look online in any of the discussion groups or boards or forums or anything to do with medicinal effects of cannabis, you'll find that most people recommend not THC, excuse me, CBD. A lot of people recommend CBD. They say that's anti-inflammatory, etc. But up to this point, both studies confirmed that THC was effective combating Crohn's disease. So in the final study, they took a look at CBD. They offered 10 milligrams twice daily. I'm not sure in the form, but obviously that's pretty low. 10 milligrams is not that high. It's more than the first study. Unless the first study messed up their numbers because they said they only gave half a milligram of THC. So this is actually 20 times the amount at 10 milligrams of CBD instead. So they concluded that it was safe to consume but did not offer any beneficial effects. And the reasoning behind that was either because the CBD had no effect or the dosage was too low. And then another study, just talking in general about cannabis and IBD, says that the benefits from consuming cannabis may be simply derived from pain relief and not from improvement in inflammation. So to conclude this video, sativa is considered to be more effective than cannabis when taking cannabis for medicinal reasons. Smoking 1 to 3 joints per day has been proven beneficial. Smoking is not the only form you can take it in. Again, you can take it, like I said, in a bong. You can take it in an edible. If you've never taken an edible before, it takes longer to kick in, and it lasts longer. So even if you're taking it in the night, make sure you take it relatively early in the night because the effects will go on into the next morning, and it may even be hard to wake up the next morning, depending on how strong it is, depending on if you're new to cannabis. If you're new to cannabis, it could have a long effect on you. So take it at 5 p.m. at the latest if you need to be up by 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. for your work the next morning. You can also take cannabis by oil. CBD oil is probably the most popular. Like THC oil isn't. I'm sure it exists, but most people that just want THC just buy an ounce online. At least in Canada, you can just buy it online. And if you're in the States, I think everything is state by state right now. I buy it online, ships to my door in the next couple of days. I go on Amazon, I buy the rolling papers, I buy the grinder, I buy the tips or filters, whatever you want to call them. And you can buy a little roller if you don't know how to roll, and it makes it super easy. Watch a YouTube video. It takes like 2 minutes to understand how to do, and then you can just quickly roll a joint and quickly smoke it. It takes, under 2 minutes to roll it, and you can smoke it right away. Edibles, you got to cook. Using a bong is also pretty quick, actually probably quicker than rolling a joint if you know how to use one. A big thing I do want to note is that cannabis is known for its placebo effects. The fact that 40% of people that took placebo cannabis thought it had effects is shocking. It's crazy. People just think that because everyone else says cannabis is going to work, that it's going to work. Like they want cannabis to work, even if they're not even taking cannabis. They're taking placebo. They're taking an empty leaf that doesn't have anything in it. And I also looked for some studies with Crohn's and CBD to try to find something other than what we found. But that third study was the only one I could really find. All the other ones didn't really focus on CBD and Crohn's disease. For different diseases and whatnot, they have more studies on CBD. And I'm sure there's studies from people that are not reputable, but I was only looking for professional scholarly sources that would be considered valid if you're writing a thesis paper or something. So this research is all done by professional institutions. So anyways, that's it. That wraps up the video on cannabis and IBD. Any questions, let me know. Subscribe to the channel if you want to learn more about, battling Crohn's disease, UC, any sort of IBD. I make videos about this stuff all the time. And I'm always looking for new video ideas. So if you have anything particular you want me to answer or research for you, drop a comment and I will find it for you. Anyways, bye for now.